Everybody, is it the reason why you guys are not paying whatever that vendor is?
What was it for?
It was
Tiffany Henyard, once hailed as Dalton's first female mayor and a trailblazer for the community, now finds herself at the heart of a political storm that has shaken the small Illinois village to its core. Her tenure, once celebrated for breaking gender barriers, is now overshadowed by serious allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and abuse of power. As the embattled mayor faces mounting scrutiny, her leadership has come into question, with residents and critics alike voicing concerns over her actions. The accusations against Henyard are grave and include claims that she appointed unqualified allies to key positions, consolidating her power and furthering her personal interests. Additionally, it is alleged that she embezzled state funds for her personal extravagances, deepening the divide between her and the community. What was once seen as an empowering political rise is now viewed by many as a quest to safeguard her own interests. Disregarding the people she was elected to serve, the situation has ignited public outrage, with residents expressing feelings of betrayal, disillusionment, and distrust toward both Henyard and the political system that allowed her rise. The scandal has exposed deep fractures in community, with many questioning how such behavior could have gone unchecked for so long. The drama took a shocking turn when Henyard's lover testified against her, providing crucial evidence that further strengthened the case against her. His testimony has lent credibility to the allegations of corruption, leaving her supporters scrambling to defend her actions and making it harder for even her most loyal backers to justify her behavior. The community's sense of betrayal has only intensified as more details about Henyard's alleged misconduct come to light. While she has dismissed the accusations as politically motivated attacks designed to tarnish her image, her defense seems increasingly weak in the face of mounting evidence. Her opponents have seized upon the scandal, framing the charges as part of a calculated smear campaign aimed at undermining her vision for the future of Dalton. This ongoing drama has captivated the community, turning Henyard's fall from grace into a spectacle that feels more like a political thriller than real life for Henyard. This is a critical juncture in her political career. With each new revelation, her chances of surviving the scandal seem slimmer. As the investigation unfolds, it has become clear that the damage to both her reputation and the community's trust is profound. Many are beginning to question not only Henyard's future, but also Dalton's ability to recover from the damage caused by her leadership. Once hopeful for progress under her guidance, the community now faces an uncertain future as trust in its political leadership has been severely eroded. As Henyard's fate hangs in the balance, her supporters continue to cling to the notion that the accusations are a deliberate attack on her vision for Dalton. However, her critics are increasingly confident that her political career is nearing its end. Investigations into her alleged actions have uncovered troubling evidence of illegal appointments made without proper approval from Dalton's Board of Trustees. These actions, if proven true, suggest a flagrant disregard for the legal processes that govern local governance. Henyard allegedly circumvented the necessary procedures to make key appointments to positions of power and influence within Dalton. Undermining the very system she was sworn to uphold. The political turmoil in Dalton has become a mix of personal betrayal, power struggles, and public disillusionment, with Henyard at the center of it all. As the investigation delves deeper, it becomes increasingly apparent that the scale of corruption and mismanagement may be far worse than anyone initially suspected. With the FBI now involved in the investigation, the possibility of federal charges looms large over Henyard, and the walls seem to be closing in on her. The community, once hopeful for progress, now faces the very real possibility that the political system that allowed Henyard to rise to power has been deeply flawed and corrupt. For the residents of Dalton, the question is no longer whether Henyard will survive the storm, but whether the village itself can rebuild after the damage caused by her leadership. The trust that was once placed in Henyard's leadership has been shattered, and it remains to be seen whether Dalton can recover from the fallout. The political drama surrounding Henyard serves as a stark reminder of how power can corrupt, and how quickly a promising political career can unravel when trust is broken and the truth is revealed. As the investigation continues and new revelations emerge, all eyes are on Henyard, her supporters, and her detractors, waiting to see how this political drama will unfold. The impact of her downfall is already being felt across Dalton, and it remains uncertain whether the community will ever fully recover from the damage caused by her reign.
Investigator, I've got from both sets from there. Inside I have from the United States District Courtroom.
Tiffany Henyard's political downfall has become a tale marked by defiance, mounting controversy, and erosion of public trust. Henyard's rise to power as the first female mayor of Dalton, Illinois, was celebrated as a historic achievement, But what began as a moment of progress soon unraveled into a series of missteps, legal challenges, and accusations that have left the town grappling with the consequences of her leadership. Henyard's first controversial decisions revolved around her attempts to appoint key figures to critical positions in the village, including the village attorney, police chief, and village administrator. These appointments were intended to exert significant control over how Dalton was run, but they soon came under fire for not meeting legal standards. A judge swiftly intervened, blocking the appointments and citing the failure to follow proper legal procedures instead of adjusting her approach to align with the law. Henyard doubled down, surrounding herself with individuals who lacked the qualifications or authority for positions. This defiant move sparked a standoff between her administration, the judicial system, and the village trustees. Henyard's refusal to comply with the ruling demonstrated a clear disregard for governance norms, causing alarm among residents and critics alike. It became apparent that she was more interested in consolidating power than in ensuring the town was governed by fair, competent leadership. The defiance Henyard exhibited was not subtle. Her repeated actions not only ignored legal orders, but appeared to be an attempt to assert dominance and undermine any potential challengers within her administration. She seemed to be building a team of loyalists who would not challenge her authority, rather than appointing individuals based on merit or the needs of the community. To many, it became evident that Henyard was prioritizing her own political power over the welfare of Dalton's residents rather than stepping back and addressing concerns raised by the legal system. Henyard seemed emboldened by the controversy, pushing forward with a leadership style that many viewed as increasingly autocratic. The situation became more divisive, as those who once supported her began to distance themselves. Henyard's refusal to compromise, paired with her growing sense of entitlement, created an atmosphere of tension within the village. Residents who had once celebrated her election as a historic moment now found themselves questioning her commitment to fairness, justice, and community service. As the situation worsened, Henyard's administration became a focal point for criticism. Local headlines were filled with stories about her refusal to comply with judicial orders, her disregard for the rule of law, and her contentious relationship with the village trustees. The growing sense of distrust, especially as her administration clashed with the board, painted Henyard's leadership as one that thrived on confrontation instead of cooperation. The most alarming aspect of this ongoing saga was the extent to which Henyard appeared to prioritize her personal ambitions over the needs of the village. Rather than working toward consensus building, she fostered an atmosphere of division. Her actions suggested that her focus had shifted from serving the community to preserving her own power and control. As the controversy continued to escalate, Henyard's once ardent supporters grew increasingly difficult to find. Evidence of her controversial decisions, coupled with her inability to collaborate with others, made it clear that her leadership style was becoming a liability for the community. The village's political climate, already tense, grew more volatile as questions arose about the long-term implications of her actions. Henyard's blatant disregard for the law raised serious concerns about the integrity of Dalton's political system. Her refusal to adhere to the rulings of the judiciary and her consistent attempts to consolidate power suggested a dangerous erosion of checks and balances within the local government. The situation left many residents wondering what the future held for their town if Henyard continued to wield such unchecked authority. However, the most explosive development came in the form of a witness testimony that sent shockwaves through the community. A figure who had previously been considered peripheral to the unfolding drama suddenly came forward with explosive allegations that could very well spell the end of Henyard's political career. According to the testimony, Henyard, once hailed as Dalton's first female mayor, had been abusing her office for personal gain. The accusations were severe, alleging a pattern of financial misconduct that prioritized Henyard's luxurious lifestyle over the needs of the community. The witness claimed that Henyard had used municipal funds to finance extravagant vacations, make lavish purchases, and indulge in other personal luxuries. In the midst of this alleged financial mismanagement, Dalton's residents were left to bear the brunt of her actions. Struggling as essential community programs went underfunded, but the accusations didn't end with financial misconduct. The testimony also accused Henyard of engaging in bribery and misusing her power to strike under-the-table deals with local businesses. These deals allegedly involved accepting payments in exchange for favorable treatment, fast-track permits, and the overlooking of established rules and regulations. If true, these actions would demonstrate a shocking abuse of power, turning public service on its head in favor of personal enrichment. The allegations painted a troubling picture of a mayor who used her position to create a system of favoritism and self-dealing. The testimony suggested that Henyard had turned the village government into a tool to serve her personal interests, undermining the trust and accountability that are essential in any functioning democracy. As Dalton faced mounting financial difficulties, the community's concerns grew. Many residents earned far less than Henyard's own considerable salary, raising questions about how much of their tax dollars had been misused for personal indulgences. At a time when the village desperately needed funding for essential services, such as infrastructure, education, and public health, Henyard's alleged actions seemed to prioritize her own comfort over the very people she was elected to serve. The financial mismanagement and abuse of power went beyond just the accusations of misconduct. The broader implications were just as alarming, as the scandal raised serious questions about the depth of corruption within Henyard's administration. Were these actions isolated incidents, or were they part of a larger, systemic pattern of greed and negligence? What other aspects of Dalton's government had been compromised under Henyard's leadership? As the investigation into Henyard's actions began to gain traction, her response was one of vehement denial. She framed the allegations as a politically motivated smear campaign, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing. However, her relationships with powerful individuals and associates were now under intense scrutiny. Some speculated that these connections may have enabled or concealed her alleged misconduct for much longer than would have been possible in a less politically connected environment. The call for transparency and accountability grew louder. Dalton's residents, already disillusioned by the earlier controversies surrounding Henyard appointments and her disregard for legal orders, now demanded a full investigation into her financial dealings and the political ties that might have shielded her from scrutiny. With the investigation underway, the potential consequences for Henyard's future and the future of Dalton became ever more uncertain. The testimony from the witness fueled an already growing sense of outrage among the public. Critics questioned the extent of Henyard's influence over the town's administration and whether her relationships with powerful figures had allowed her to act with impunity. The political fallout from these revelations could be catastrophic, potentially unraveling years of progress and eroding the public trust to an irreparable degree as the situation continued to unfold. The promising future once envisioned for Henyard's leadership seemed to be slipping away. Once hailed as a trailblazer for women in politics, she now found herself facing the very real possibility of criminal charges and a dramatic fall from grace. Dalton's residents were left to pick up the pieces of a political system that had been tainted by corruption and scandal, wondering if the town would ever be able to recover from the damage caused by Henyard's alleged abuse of power. What was once a moment of hope and progress for the village of Dalton now stands as a cautionary tale of ambition unchecked, where leaders' pursuit of personal gain left the community to suffer in the wake of their actions.
But those invoices lead to more questions, and sometimes we don't get answers to those questions. And so it's not about clickbait, it's about just...
The political turmoil surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard took an unexpected and dramatic turn when her boyfriend unexpectedly took a stand in a courtroom drama that not only shocked the public, but also left Henyard visibly rattled. As he began to testify, private details about Henyard's personal life were exposed, causing immediate escalation in tension both inside and outside the courtroom. Henyard, clearly caught off guard by the revelations, lost control, erupting into a full-blown meltdown. She screamed at her boyfriend, causing a major disruption in the proceedings. Her emotional outburst only worsened the situation, reinforcing the growing perception that she was losing control not just of her temper, but of the entire political crisis she had helped create. The chaos in the courtroom sent shockwaves through the public, intensifying perception that Henyard was no longer capable of managing the growing storm surrounding her leadership. The public reaction was swift and intense. Dalton residents, who had already grown disillusioned with Henyard's handling of her role as mayor, were further enraged by the outburst. As word spread about her emotional outburst, social media erupted in condemnation. Numerous comments flooded in, with many demanding her resignation, accusing her of betraying the community's trust. One particularly harsh comment labeled Henyard as corrupt as they come, and insisted that she should be imprisoned for her actions, citing what they believed to be clear and traceable crimes. The anger from Dalton's residents was palpable. For many, Henyard had been the face of local government, and they were outraged to see that she had seemingly placed her own interests above the needs of the town. As the scandal deepened, Henyard's behavior only seemed to escalate, further alienating the public. Instead of remaining composed or attempting to salvage what was left of her reputation, Henyard continued to act in ways that fueled the growing anger. She arrived late to a village board meeting, a meeting that had been moved to the local park district building due to the overcrowding at Village Hall. The overflow crowd was a clear sign of the public's growing dissatisfaction with her leadership. When Henyard entered the meeting, she attempted to take control and deliver a speech as if nothing was wrong. The audience, however, greeted her with boos, making it clear that they were no longer willing to tolerate her actions or her leadership. The boos echoed through the hall, signaling that Henyard's attempt to reassert herself was falling flat rather than acknowledging the situation or attempting to address the concerns of the community. Henyard responded by attempting to push forward with her agenda, but the tension only escalated as she received invoices during the meeting, which raised even more questions about her spending and the management of public funds. The public's frustration grew as they felt their concerns were being ignored. Many residents were left wondering where their tax dollars were going. Especially in light of the growing allegations of financial mismanagement, things became even more complicated when accusations surfaced about Henyard and her administration violating state laws concerning openness and transparency. Critics claimed that Henyard had deliberately violated regulations to conceal her actions, further deepening the already widespread sense of betrayal. Henyard and her allies responded by attempting to frame the entire situation as part of a politically motivated attack. Henyard herself took to social media, posting a cryptic message on Facebook calling on her remaining supporters to stand by her. Her post read, "I need all my black sheep to stand with me. If God is for us, then who could be against us?" The message seemed to be an attempt to rally her supporters in the face of mounting opposition. However, despite her call for solidarity, it was clear that her base of support was quickly shrinking as the anger from the general public only grew stronger in the background of all this public turmoil. A federal investigation into Henyard's administration had been quietly unfolding for nearly a year. Federal officials were investigating questionable financial dealings and the misuse of funds by the mayor and her closest allies. Although the full details of the investigation had not been fully revealed, it was clear that federal authorities were taking the matter seriously. The inquiry had already led to questioning of several individuals close to Henyard, including her boyfriend, whose testimony had already shocked the courtroom and caused further public outrage. As the investigation continued, rumors began to circulate that Henyard's political inner circle was beginning to crack under the pressure. It became increasingly evident that the strong political network Henyard had once built was unraveling. Her closest allies, once unwavering in their support, now appeared to be distancing themselves from her. As federal investigators closed in, it was becoming harder for Henyard to maintain the facade of a leader who had the town's best interests at heart. The questions about her financial mismanagement, possible corruption, and abuse of power were no longer whispers, but very real concerns that were threatening not just her political career, but the stability of Dalton's government. The fallout from the investigation and public outcry had quickly turned Henyard's leadership into a full-blown political crisis. The people of Dalton were left to question if they had been deceived by the very person they had once trusted to lead them into a better future. As the investigation into her actions continued to unfold, the once promising future of Henyard's leadership seemed to be crumbling. The trust and faith Dalton's residents had placed in their first female mayor were quickly deteriorating, replaced by a growing sense of betrayal and fear about the future of their community. Despite all this, Henyard refused to back down. She continued to deny the allegations, framing them as part of a political plot aimed at weakening her authority and derailing her re-election campaign. In the face of mounting criticism, Henyard seemed intent on fighting back, even as the pressure from the public, the media, and the federal investigation grew heavier. The contrast between the public's disillusionment and Henyard's defiant posture could not have been starker. Many residents, who had once seen her as a trailblazer for women in politics, now viewed her as a symbol of corruption and mismanagement. The federal investigation, which had been quietly ongoing, was beginning to shine a light on even more troubling aspects of Henyard's tenure. Details were starting to emerge about a pattern of dubious spending and financial mismanagement within Henyard's administration. Federal officials were looking closely at expenditures that appeared to prioritize Henyard's personal interests over the needs of the community. These revelations only deepened the sense of betrayal felt by Dalton's residents, who were already struggling economically and had placed their faith in a leader who promised to improve their lives. As the investigation widened, it became apparent that the corruption within Henyard's administration might be more extensive than initially thought. Rumors circulated that some of her closest allies had become tangled in the web of corruption, with a growing sense that even Henyard's inner circle was starting to crumble under the mounting pressure. Many began to wonder how much of the town's resources had been diverted to fund Henyard's personal lifestyle, leaving Dalton's residents to bear the burden of her mismanagement and greed at the same time. Some local political figures began to voice their concerns. One trustee, in a rare moment of candor, openly called for Henyard to step down, stating that the town needed true leadership to move forward. The trustee's comments signaled a growing dissatisfaction among local officials who had once been part of Henyard's political network. The walls were closing in, and the pressure on Henyard to resign was mounting. The growing scrutiny from the public and fellow trustees painted a bleak picture of her future, with many questioning whether she could survive the scandal and regain the trust of Dalton's residents. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, a vocal critic of Henyard's handling of the town's finances, publicly stated that Dalton's financial situation was in ruins due to Henyard's reckless spending and lack of oversight. Lightfoot's comments added fuel to the fire, further emphasizing the severity of the situation. It became clear that Henyard's leadership was not just a failure in terms of governance, but was also contributing to the town's economic decline. The fallout from these scandals had already begun to unravel Henyard's political career. The federal investigation had exposed a pattern of corruption and financial mismanagement, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Henyard had used the position for personal gain rather than for the betterment of Dalton. The questions surrounding her leadership were no longer just about policy differences or political disagreements. The focus had shifted to allegations of criminal activity, and the public was demanding answers despite her best efforts to deflect and deny the accusations. The damage to Henyard's reputation was undeniable. Her behavior in recent months, her emotional outbursts, her refusal to address the concerns of the community, and her continued deflection of responsibility had only further alienated her from the public. The trust that once existed between her and Dalton's residents was eroding, and her ability to lead the town was in serious jeopardy, with rumors of even more damaging evidence set to emerge. The question on everyone's mind was whether Henyard's political career could be saved. It seemed unlikely that she would be able to recover from the growing scandal, even if she avoided jail time. The damage to her reputation was potentially irreparable, and the future of Dalton was now in question. The town, already facing financial instability, was now grappling with the fallout from a political crisis that threatened to unravel the very fabric of local governance. The situation in Dalton had reached a critical point. The federal investigation, the public outcry, and the growing pressure from trustees and local officials were forcing Henyard into a corner. The question was no longer whether she could maintain control of the town, but whether she could salvage her political career and reputation. As the investigation continued, it became increasingly likely that Henyard's tenure as mayor would come to a dramatic and controversial end. Whether she would step down voluntarily or be forced out remained to be seen, but one thing was clear. The future of Dalton was now in a precarious position, and its leadership was mired in chaos in the end. Only time would tell how the situation would unfold. Would Henyard step down, or would she continue to fight to hold on to her position? The residents of Dalton, once hopeful about their town's future under Henyard's leadership, now found themselves questioning whether they had been misled all along. The scandal, which had started as whispers of corruption, had grown into a full-blown political crisis, and its ramifications were still unfolding. With the federal investigation still ongoing and more revelations likely to come to light, the residents of Dalton were left to wonder what would happen to their town if Henyard could not clear her name. Would the scandal bring the community closer together, or would it tear it apart? The uncertainty of the situation hung heavy in the air, and as each new detail emerged, it was clear that this political crisis would not be easily forgotten.